All right, looks like we are live and we're back. And yeah, it's been a minute, man. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a hot minute. I think the last time I saw you guys, I was doing, I guess you could call it a book expose. Wasn't quite any book reviews. I was just uh, helping my audience to become familiar with the literature on the historicity of Jesus, and we looked at quite a few books. And Christmas time was coming up. Maybe there could have been a few gifts for Christmas that somebody could have put on their list or something like that. But no, no. In the near future, I'm hoping to actually do some book reviews, especially here in this area of Kemet. Because I do got some books dealing with that a little bit. But no, it's good to be talking with you guys again. I have missed you. Um, it's been the holidays have come and gone, and here we are at the beginning of a new decade. So we thank God that we are alive and breathing on the precipice of eternity, as the good old preachers would say. Uh, but got quite a few things coming up. Shout out to all those who've been helpful in my development, especially with the development of this platform. Ada Coleman, Vocab Malone, all of you wonderful people, Sister Nefertiti. I've been enjoying the work that she's been putting forth. Just a couple of announcements in the near future. Word on the street is Brother Polite and soon to be Dr. Damon Richardson are going to be locking up. And we know that God is going to use Elder Damon Richardson for his glory. And who better? Some of us are just built a certain way, but who better than that brother? So I am looking forward to that one because some people just love to debate, and if you know Elder Richardson, Damon is that dude. He's humble, but he's that guy. Better to have him on your team than against you. But before we close, I will make another announcement because we do have quite a bit coming up in the month of March. But I want to get right to it. Last time I talked to you guys on a serious note, other than books, we was talking about worldviews. We got into some introductory comments about worldviews and how worldviews pertain to the noetic structure or plausibility structure that everybody possesses. And noetic structures are the sum total of a person's beliefs. And certain objects of beliefs are propositions, and they have at least four identifiable features. They can be characterized by, how they are related to each other. They have different degrees of certainty. These beliefs differ in influence or control of other beliefs. So basically, I told you guys about how a noetic structure is basically a web of beliefs, excuse me, and within the web of beliefs of mature, rational people are found worldviews. And basically, what we define a worldview is a conceptual scheme by which a person consciously or unconsciously places or fits everything we believe, and by which people interpret and judge reality. Okay. Uh, Pointed out that as apologists, we have a responsibility to help people realize what a worldview is, uh, We want to assist them in achieving a better understanding of their own worldview and aid them in changing their worldview by exposing inconsistency, issues, and providing new info to replace bad info and things like that. So, that is our job as a Christian apologist to do those three things. But furthermore, in the second round of our worldview series, kind of talked about the Christian worldview and how it's not what it is not, and we're defining by negation a little bit. Excuse me. What it is not is a bunch of theological tidbits, uh, a bunch of theological tidbits, but it's rather a whole worldview system. And me personally, I prefer to make the case for Christianity in terms of worldviews. Christianity case, according to me, this is just me, should be made in terms of a total system. And in my experience, I have noticed that Christianity is often rejected, yes, because of sin and things like that and stuff like that, but it's often rejected because of anti-Christian bias or presuppositions flowing from a worldview that's antithetical to Christianity. Before I keep going, I just want to point out that I had recorded this whole at least 40 minutes worth of recording, and I have a piece of equipment that I paid good money for, and it went out on me. Ain't that something? Anyway, yeah, we're using the Focusrite right now, and I'm so thankful for Focusrite. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was kind of whack, but anyway, I just had to get that was me venting. That's why I should record more often so I don't forget how to use my equipment and things like that. But no, seriously, I think that bad boy went out. So, uh, just a word of advice: if you read the yeah, what is that? Where the customers leave a note, or if you read what the customers have to say about a product, believe them. I took my chances with this piece of crap, and I should have just believed the good people what they said about it. I thought it would be different for me. I'm upset, but to God be the glory. All right, let's keep talking about worldviews. But I just left off where we talked about people reject the Christian worldview because of anti-Christian bias and presuppositions. The beautiful thing about that is we can do what's called negative apologetics, and we can do what the Bible tells us to do. Is that we can pull down strongholds and remove barriers and things like that, and then we can go into a positive case for the Christian worldview. Um, but pulling down strongholds, and this is from 2 Corinthians 10:35. Yeah, we can destroy uh, fortresses and things like that. And I know people hearing me when I'm saying some my non-Christian audience here, but check this out. 2 Corinthians 10:3-5. For we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God to the pulling down of strongholds. Here it is. And this is the NKJV version. And I like how they worded it, but you got, other versions as well. But we casting down arguments in every high thing that exalts itself against the what? The knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. So, we can go into negative apologetics to do just that right there. And then after we bulldoze bad arguments and things like that, and all these crazy arguments and high thoughts that want to exalt itself, then we can make a positive presentation that offers support for the essentials. This positive presentation can, it can explain the details and offer reasons why Christianity or the Christian worldview is superior rationally, morally, and existentially. So, yeah, that's that. We can get right to it in that a fashion. So, yeah, but I know I'm using a lot of philosophical talk and things like that, but I just want everybody to know that for at least three reasons, philosophy matters. I'm going to tell you why. Philosophy and the Christian worldview. The Christian worldview has an intrinsic relationship with philosophy and the world of ideas. It matters because philosophy is related in a critically important way to life, culture, and religion. And lastly, philosophy matters because opposing systems, use philosophical language and methods and arguments. So there's nothing wrong with being familiar with philosophical lingo and how it's intertwined with Christian theism, so to speak. So yes, philosophy is a tool, and I'm about to use another philosophical word, presuppositions. Okay, presuppositions. I want to point out that along with worldviews, many worldviews are built upon presuppositions, and our noetic structures or plausibility structures contain many beliefs that we presuppose and accept without support from other beliefs. Okay, some people call them properly basic beliefs. Some people call them presuppositions, axioms, things like that. But the fact of the matter is, these are important and necessary if we are to think at all. Okay, so put shortly, presuppositions are the most basic and important beliefs about God, reality, and man. So yeah, everyone has them. But some person might say, well, let's just prove everything. Let's just prove everything by science. Let's just go with science. So they want to assume that science is some neutral way of gaining knowledge, and that's misleading, and it's naive because everyone has presuppositions, and this includes scientists, and by their own presupposition, scientists make important epistemological, metaphysical, and ethical assumptions. These assumptions include that knowledge is possible, that sense experience is reliable, and that the universe is regular, along with the assumption that they should be honest in reporting their findings. These presupposition or basic assumptions are important because of the way pretty much they determine the method and the goal of theoretical thought. So every world pretty much has presuppositions. But in closing of the last time I talked to you about worldviews, I talked to you about how worldviews have a touchstone proposition, which is held to be the fundamental truth about reality and serves as the criterion to determine which other propositions may count as candidates for beliefs. So the Christian proposition, touchstone proposition, is that human beings and the universe in which they reside are the creation of the personal God revealed in the scriptures of the Old and New Testament. Okay, the basic presupposition of the Christian worldview is the existence of God revealed in the scripture. So, excuse me, as one can see, there is a linkage between God and the scripture, and it's quite proper. The truth of the matter is, this particularly touchstone proposition allows me as a Christian ready access to all that the scriptures says about God, the world, and humankind. Now, somebody out there, some skeptic out there might be screaming, "That's not fair." This is not an unfair advantage. What would be a stupid and unfair thing would be any attempt to separate the Christian God from his self disclosure. So I accept that God has revealed himself in nature, not only in nature, but in the scriptures, and most importantly, in the person of Jesus Christ. As Carl F.H. Henry notes, God is not a nameless spirit awaiting post mortem examination in some theological morgue. He is a very particular, specific divinity known from the beginning solely on the basis of his works and self disclosure as the one and living God. So, I hold to the presupposition of that touchstone proposition. And that touchstone proposition tells us something about God, the God who was revealed in Scripture. So, with that in mind, the one of the most important questions when it comes to this worldview thinking and analysis is, how do we go about choosing a worldview? Now, the Bible tells us that we have choices to make, and we're going to be held accountable for our choices and things like that, and that we should not only serve God with our soul and our body, but also with our mind. So when it comes to choosing a worldview, a person must answer, in my opinion, at least three serious questions. On what grounds can people make a reasoned choice amongst worldview? Which worldview is most likely to be true? And what is the basis and most promising way to approach this question as a whole? So, when faced with the choice among competing worldviews, we should choose the one that, when applied to the whole of reality, gives us the most coherent picture of the world. And check this out. Look at what Dr. Gordon Clark says. Gordon Clark explains it like this: if one system can provide plausible solutions to many problems while another leaves too many questions unanswered, if one system tends less to skepticism and gives more meaning to life, if one worldview is consistent while the others are self-contradictory, who can deny us, since we must choose the right to choose the more promising first principle? Okay, so yes, let us go ahead and get into how we go about making that choice. Okay, so thank God for his revelation. And his revelation not only includes special revelation, but general revelation as well. And there are we have general revelation revealed in nature, and we also have general revelation revealed in human beings being made in the image of God. And from God's general revelation, in his general and special revelation, we can derive three basic tests for any worldview to pass. And I wish I had more time to talk to you about the importance of the laws of logic. A that'll have to be a another show or a podcast, whatever we calling this thing. I don't know. I'm gonna say podcast. It have to be another podcast where we just focus in on logic. But the three tests are as follows: the test of reason, and the test of experience, and the test of practice. Okay, so there's three tests: the test of reason, the test of experience, and the test of practice. Let me just talk to you a little bit about the of uh, test of reason here. Okay, I think entirely too many Christians, reason is seen as somehow as the enemy of Christian faith. I disagree strongly with that widely held but self-destructive thesis. By the test of reason, what we're talking about is logical coherency, specifically the law of non contradiction. Furthermore, When we're talking about a worldview, the presence of a contradiction is always a sign of error, since we have a right to expect a conceptual system to be logically consistent, both in its parts, its individual propositions, and in the whole. A conceptual system is an obvious trouble that fails to hang together logically. Okay, so, so we're talking about reason, and we're talking about logic. Once again, I'm gonna probably go back over logic, the importance of logic, some of the laws of logic, and how these laws are necessary. They are necessary. These are not human conventions. They were not invented, because to deny them, you would have to employ them in order to deny them. So that's just totally absurd to sit there and think that you could say that somebody invented logic and things like that. There goes that stolen legacy thesis right there. So, by this, we mean logical consistency. Furthermore, the essential important elements in any worldview must accord with one another without contradiction. Okay? The internal planks, or the chunks, the large chunks, the conceptual planks that are necessary for a worldview itself. An example of this, what we mean by the important chunks, the boot, such as the Buddhist religion. Okay, the Buddhist religion has karma and reincarnation. So these are important chunks of a worldview. These are what we're talking about. Okay, so internal or logical consistency is a necessary test for all worldviews. As we hinted at before, logical inconsistency or incoherence can be more or less fatal depending on whether the problem exists amongst those large chunk beliefs, or those large plank beliefs, or whether it lies at the heart of the system as a whole. Okay, so skepticism. Okay, this is a worldview, and we're gonna just do a quick test of skepticism according to the test of reason. Okay, skepticism. Okay, if you don't know what skepticism is the position that nothing can be demonstrated. Okay, and how, we ask, can you demonstrate that nothing can be demonstrated? The skeptic asserts that nothing can be known. In his haste, he said that truth was impossible. And is it true that truth is impossible? That's a good question that we ask. For if no proposition is true, then at least one proposition is true. The proposition that, namely, no proposition is true. If truth is impossible, therefore, it follows that we have already attained it. Okay? So, we see right here that the skeptic affirms a contradiction. For while he holds that no one can know anything, he is quite certain that he himself knows that no one can know anything, or at least that he knows that he doubts that anyone can know anything. Okay? Some philosophers have described such views as being self-referentially absurd. What this means is that whenever such a position is applied to itself, the result is nonsense, self-defeating nonsense. So, we can X off skepticism as self-referentially absurd. So, inconsistency is always a sign of error. As pointed out, some philosophical systems or positions seem to self destruct in the sense that they are internally self defeating. Okay. So I could talk to you a little about how how determinism is self defeating when it comes to knowledge, and how we come about knowing certain things and things like that. But we'll save that for another time. So we have a reasonable expectation for certain worldviews to, flow together in a coherent fashion. Okay. But that's just one test. And like I said, the red flag should go up if the inconsistency lies among important beliefs within the system. But what about the test of experience? Okay, We have a reasonable expectation that a worldview should touch bases or touch base with our experience by having some type of, what's the word, explanatory scope and power. In other words, can a worldview account for our experience uh, of our experiences of the inner world and the outer world? Okay, what do I mean by the inner world? By the inner world, I'm talking about that the qualities of what makes a person, a human being, a human being. Let me see here. Just wanted to try to nail this thing down for you. Okay. Not talking about some type of ghost within a machine, but I'm talking about the kind of information that includes things like this, that I am a being who thinks, hopes, experiences pleasure, pain, believes, and desires. I'm also a being who is often conscious of right and wrong. Sometimes I feel guilty and sinful for having failed to do what is right. I am a being who remembers the past and is conscious of the present and anticipates the future. The worldviews need to account for the fact that I can think about things that do not exist that I want to do. I have intentional states. I can plan and then take it upon myself to execute said plans. And I am acting intentionally instead of merely responding to a certain type of stimulus. I'm capable of loving other people and I'm capable of empathizing. So, certain worldviews must account for certain qualities like this. In other words, can a worldview account for our experiences without playing the mystery or illusion card, so to speak? Yeah, we heard Brother Jabari pretty much get into detail about what he believed in the debate with Dr. Bantu. And, you heard the words illusion and mystery and things like that. So these are red flags for a worldview failing to line up with what we know about ourselves and what we also know about the world. Okay, and for the most part, worldviews should account for our experiences easily and naturally. They should be relevant in some way to what we know about ourselves and the world. Okay, what about the moral consciousness that we all seem to possess? Can certain worldviews account for that inner quality of moral awareness? And once again, this would be a test of the inner world. I did have a quote by Mr. C.S. Lewis, but I'm running out here a long time, so I'm gonna save that quote for some other time. It's a big block quote. But, can a worldview account for moral consciousness? And moral consciousness presupposes, distinction in persons. For how can, we watch how we treat other people if other people are illusions and things like that? So, once again, there's another nugget for you, all you comedic pantheists. Why complain about the Dwight man, as Sister Nefertiti would put the white man? So what are you complaining about if all distinction and things like that or illusions and things like that? And once there's that mystery card too. But you know, so the pantheistic view obviously fails in terms of the inner world and what we know about itself. But what about the outer world? Okay. What about the beginning of the universe? The Kemetic teachings and some of the original sources posit the primacy of the primordial waters, basically matter, and everything else emerging from matter. And modern science teaches that the universe had a beginning. Okay, so we have an antithesis between the outer world and this mystery system that certain people hold to. What about certain facts of history? A lot of these mythological systems are ahistorical, and we see the Christian message, the Gospels, going out of their way to record history. So, which worldview can account for even scientific, facts of the beginning of the cosmos, beginning of the universe, and certain facts of history and things like that? But that's the second test. That's the test of experience. But what about this last test, and that is the test of practice? Okay, so worldviews should be tested not only by how they measure up theoretically or philosophically, but also how well they do in the laboratory of life. Case in point, it is one thing to pass certain theoretical tests. It is another for that worldview to also pass important practical tests, namely this: can the people who hold this worldview, in theory, also practice what they believe in their daily lives? Can a person consistently live the system he or she professes, or do we notice that, excuse me, my goodness, or do we notice that he or she is forced to live in a manner inconsistent with said worldview by borrowing from a competing system? This type of inconsistency, if discovered, should produce more than embarrassment. So, and this is where you, as the Christian, really start to begin to bear down and ask questions. And brother Adam Coleman talked about this on the Jude 3 podcast. And another good book for everyone to get is Greg Kouk's book, Tactics. And this will help you out in that area, because you're not the only one shouldering a burden of proof or anything like that. These other people are just as much as the burden of proof for what they believe, just as much as you do. So, and we're going to, in the next episode, we're going to actually apply these tests to the Kemetic worldview, and just to see how it lines up. It's nice that the Kemetics had a worldview and they came up with it, but is it true? That's the question. Is it true? Can people live according to it? So, can a person like Brother Jabari really live as if all of reality is one, if it's monistic or pantheistic? Can he really live as if everybody is divine? Okay, as everybody is God, so to speak. Why the complaints? Why the agitation? Why the frustration with black people as a whole? What's going on? What's going on? Okay, what's going on? So, and once again, like I said, this is where the questions would come in. But I like the way Thomas Morris explains Francis Schaeffer position in this area, because what we find here, we find that people ape the Christian worldview, they borrow from it and things like that. Thomas Morris explains it like this: no non-Christian can be consistent in the correspondence of at least some of their daily thoughts and actions and the relevant conclusions, which would logically follow from their basic set of presuppositions. The orientation of Schaeffer's position was that non-Christians would have a very difficult time of consistently working out their presuppositions as they lived in the context of their own inner world and external world. Okay. Schaeffer's practical or existential test helped lay the foundation for his punchline. And his punchline was this: only the presuppositions of historic Christianity, both adequately explain and correspond with the two environments in which every man must live: the external world with its form and complexity, and the internal world of man's own characteristics as a human being. This inner world includes such human qualities as desire for significance, love and meaning, and fear of non being, among others. One thing should be clear: any reader who comes to believe that Schaeffer comments are true will have a powerful reason to accept the Christian worldview. And we should keep his words in mind as we continue this journey of worldview thinking. So, those were the three tests. I went for about 35 minutes, and I wanted to keep it that way because I know that lengthy stuff right here. I'm trying to get you guys to hang in there with me, and I assume that my audience is hanging in there. But I know that I know that this can be some heavy stuff a little bit. But a couple of quick announcements. So I told you that I'm going to be closing up this worldview series with examining the Kemetic worldview. And, we're going to be comparing and contrasting the worldview because, once again, you have debates taking place that ask the question, was Christianity stolen from Kemet? And things like that. So, we should expect to find some heavy similarities. But we just gotta, that is going to be a long episode. I'm talking at least an hour. So, I hope you guys hang in there with me on that. It might be live, it might be video recorded because I know, y'all guys don't like looking at a black screen. But that is probably, I might split it up into 2 episodes, but that is going to be a long one because we're going to cover some information in that one. And we're going to put that dog to sleep because it's like, whenever you hear it, you're just like, oh, these people have not studied. They don't know what they're talking about. It's a very superficial argument. It's just horrible. But, we're going to get into that. We also got the Cyber City Apologetics Conference coming up, and I'm going to be covering some similar material, with problems within the Kemetic sources and things like that. And I'm prepping for that, and everything that we do on this channel is leading up to that. And, if you haven't, hit that thumbs up button and please subscribe if you have not. So I thank you for listening in with me today. I'm going to check this record and make sure it came through this time because I switched up some equipment. God. But thank y'all, and I hope y'all enjoy the rest of this wonderful Martin Luther King Day. All right, peace.